It could just be misinformation. It could, again, be people alleging that they're covered under some sort of state protection from the state of Texas, doing some sort of central counterparty swapping activity with Iran. It's been completely agreed to by both state actors in Iran as well as state actors in the United States. And those state actors in the United States have already approved the state of Texas to operate as if it is an autonomous country so that it can engage in its own treaty relations with foreign countries, including in manners that allow for some central counterparty swapping activity of this sort. This could be the case. And so, this information I'm looking at online is actually Iranian hacking in order to try to what? Test scenarios for resiliency, or the currently available information for the Department of Public Safety in Texas, CVE 13, right? Says that there are certain requirements regarding access to and operation of a farm vehicle. Now, in this document, so far as I've seen, the only age requirement it discusses is in consideration of passengers and penalties regarding passengers and seatbelts. According to the Department of Labor statistics that are available online, and I'm not even looking at the site, it's just part of what it says. Agricultural permits allow drivers under 18 years old to drive within a specific restricted area for farm work only. Requirements: there's no minimum age for a juvenile agricultural permit. Let me repeat: there's no minimum age for a juvenile agricultural permit. Now, if I recall from what was supposed to be the driver's license training program you have to participate in the state of Texas, wherein you have to take an online training program concerning distracted driving and receive a certificate that you have to redeem for and as your driver's license within a certain amount of time, or it expires and you have to go through it again and get a different certificate number. And you have to, in the state of Texas, if you are over 24 years old, do it in connection with people who are 18 to 24 as opposed to the people who are 14 to 18. Because Texas has just not, again, applied the law that it passed itself and has been operating outside of the law ever since it passed the law to create a separate adult drivers program. So anybody over the age of 24 is put in with anybody between the ages of 18 and 24 when it comes to receiving that certification. But if I recall, during that time frame, one of the things I was exposed to was understanding that in the state of Texas, they start offering independent permits for people to engage in operation of farm equipment at the age of 14. Additionally, moving forward here, on this website, on this web page for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, it says that in the state of Texas, regarding youth hunting, that a hunting license is available to those over the age of 17, but a youth special permit does not appear to have any age requirement. There is an annual hunting permit. You only need to have a hunting license and be over the age of 17, and you can sponsor or support someone under the age of 17. This is what it says. Having purchased the appropriate Texas hunting licenses and stamps, holders of an APH permit may take youth under age 17 hunting free of charge on these public hunting lands. Right here, there is a state of Texas even has a leadership development program for high school youth ages 13 to 17 interested in learning habitat management, communication skills, and developing a land ethic. Does that land ethic involve potential training in firearms, including firearms that may be used when one is hunting or when one may be called upon to address a wild animal, including a wild animal that may have some kind of disease or that may be threatening either people, for instance, at a campsite, or threatening livestock that may be on a farm? The point being that if people are responsible with their responsibilities concerning the supervision of youth and making sure youth are raised in a manner that provides them with an understanding that they have a right to defend themselves and also does what they need to do to assure against any effort to try to compel them to agree to cooperate with illegal activity, up to and including while people who are engaged in illegal activity attempt to strong arm unconstitutional changes to the law, then there is no reason why somebody who, by the way, would also be in a situation where their hormone production would make it so that they would be eligible for sexual procreation, as opposed to being under the age where their hormone production does not enable them to be capable of sexual reproduction. There's no reason why they cannot be in a situation where they are appropriately trained, including in the use of firearms, to, if necessary, defend themselves, their families, or their communities, whether or not they are in a situation of isolation or hopefully when they are in a situation where they are under the supervision of a responsible and law-abiding adult. There's no reason. Now, if the government is going to spend years intentionally using directed energy weapons, or at least the technologies that go into the manufacture of directed energy weapons, and allow for it to be mischaracterized as emerging technology development, and not provide people with appropriate training in cybersecurity or even cyber literacy, if they're not going to provide people with an understanding of the biophysiological factors that go into exposure to low-level radiation, like what happens when you're trained from a young age to be reliant on your cell phone, if they're not going to do that very basic thing, then you have to allow for an understanding that there is a necessary reaction that is going to occur by citizens who are conscious of the implications and that have been denied any access to due process for a redress of very significant grievances. I don't think this should be a problem. Oh, wait, it is. Why? Because 2 weeks ago, Congress took it upon themselves to claim that they were going to be engaging in a process of background checks around firearm access without addressing the fact that during the entirety of the Affordable Care Act, there were completely unconstitutional processes associated with alleged background checks for national security purposes that were actually about manipulating and subliminally programming people under the auspices of testing behavioral science techniques who had been fraudulently mischaracterized as being mentally ill. Why? Well, among other things, were the fact that people were hedging politically on being able to assure and secure laws against allowing for people who had been characterized with a mental illness from being able to provide for their own self-defense or self-protection, including through the use or the ownership of a firearm. Legal use, legal ownership of a firearm. So while the government was using technologies that are the components of the development of directed energy weapons on political opposition so as to intentionally discredit them with allegations that they were mentally incapacitated, they were also refusing to actually provide instruction to people, including young people, about the implications of the technologies they were using, including those that exposed them to low-level radiation, and or those that were running subroutines that were impacting them unconsciously, including in a situation where they could potentially be implanting triggers for later activation. And now, without dealing with that in any way responsibly, the Democrats want to talk about background checks for guns. Read the damn bill. It's not about background checks for guns. It's about creating an inventory on people who are gun owners. It's about creating an inventory to allow for a special designation of people that want to not only exercise their Second Amendment, but have a particular kind of actual capital based upon going through the processes of engaging in firearms training, registering their firearms, obtaining licenses, perhaps obtaining insurance for the specific firearm, perhaps fortifying their homes, or acquiring some sort of membership in a facility where they can either train or store their firearm, not to mention all of the other social and or political situations that could be created in this sort of a context. You don't have a lot of legitimacy making a completely fraudulent misrepresentation that what you're trying to do is protect people from firearm violence when you have still refused to appropriately address factors connected to Fast and Furious, and also talk about how conventional firearms, not even including automatic firearms, by the way, are used in risk leveraging scenarios that go all the way up to trafficking nuclear weapons. When you are allowed to use a person as a derivative for a handgun, and then you just keep up leveraging the risk because they refuse to be compliant with other illegal activities that serve as a buy-in that they've agreed to relent to extortion to cover up for your crimes, you get in a very, very serious situation where I'm looking right here, and there's not even an age preclusion on any young person being able to learn how to operate a firearm. The preclusion would be if you've attacked their parents. If you've attacked their parents and attempted to extort their parents into agreeing to cooperate with organized crime, including organized crime that infiltrated the government and tried to normalize us to the legitimization of dangerous drugs, starting with psychotropics that were illegally prescribed because there was no actual foundation for their prescription, and moving up to opiates, which attempted to normalize people to the acquisition of other kinds of mind-altering drugs under the auspices of alleviating pain, and then allowing for complete impunity for the criminal operators that were creating illicit patterns of distribution. While you were also using the alleged healthcare treatment you were trying to compel out of people based upon their dependency, including psychological dependency, on the mind-altering chemistry that came with the ingestion of those drugs so that you could test the development of weapons paradigms. See, I'm not advocating that parents go out and get their kids a rocket launcher and then start trying to teach them about some form of mathematics around projectiles. I'm not doing that. That's what you tried to get me to do while I was at that domestic violence shelter. That's what you wanted me to do with my boys. That's not what I did. That's not what I would do. And that's not what I'm going to do. But you need to get it through your head. You spent 10 years torturing people with background checks, where you put all kinds of crap in our background. It's actually somebody else's dirty laundry. While they take the good stuff about our lives and try to drive it around. And then do what? We're all the way down the road. You tried to get away with it again. You did not succeed.